I made YouTube videos for years before anyone cared who I was or what my channel was about, because I just really like doing it. That's going to be the same for anyone who is a career creative.
That's Venus Theory. If you don't know of him from his sound design work, sampler instruments, or compositions, then you probably know of him from his YouTube channel, where he's exploring the state of music, art, and creativity while trying to give artists the tools to build a creative career. And that's a lot of what we get into today. We talk about why creatives should be creating.
If you just get it out, the worst that happens is nobody cares. If it's bringing you fulfillment to do that thing, then that's why you should be doing it anyway.
How to frame failure as an opportunity for growth.
If you just throw your hands up and walk away, then like you are never cut out for this to begin with.
That's true.
Because you are going to fail a lot and everything's going to go wrong a lot.
Yeah.
And it's all going to come crashing down, but then it's going to be fine again.
The importance of doing gigs that excite you and how to identify them.
I kind of try to do it on a scale of 1 to 10, basically. And only the things that are an 8 out of 10 or above are the ones I'll actually do.
And most importantly, to remember that you're making art for you.
The ultimate freedom as an artist and just that license to do whatever the hell you want comes from the understanding that whatever it is you're doing, you're the one that sets the bar.
If you're making music or making anything at all, there's something in this one that you need to hear. So stick around for my interview with Venus Theory. I'm super excited about this, Hank, because a lot of the videos I've seen you do, he's just very in line with a lot of the kind of the principles that this show started with. So I think we're going to have a lot of fun. Would you be down to start with kind of a creative confidence question? So I found, I don't know if you have similar experience. I found as I released more and more podcast episodes, I had more confidence in everything I was doing, despite the fact that I already had an established music career. Like sending things to clients just got easier. Something about putting things in the world, I think, is like empowering. Have you found that to be similar in the YouTube realm? And also, is there anything we can say to people who maybe have an unreleased track or an unsent email that can just get them to like do the thing?
Right. Yeah. Kind of a big question. Yeah. I mean, I think with YouTube and with anything really, yeah, there is just a confidence factor. And like once you get over those initial hiccups, you have at least some baseline degree of certainty that this is a product that people will enjoy. It does take time and there is no easy answer right out the gate. You just have to simply get your feet wet in order to figure it out. It's like, if you're going to make your first YouTube video, it's going to be bad. It might be really, really good. It's statistically very unlikely that it will be, but you're just going to have to wing it and figure it out, because if you want to make music, right, you need to understand structure of a song. You need to understand mixing to some degree. You need like a base level understanding of mastering and how to make things sound good. And you're never going to get there if you don't do it very poorly first, a lot of times, and I think that stands for pretty much anything. If you're a tradesperson, if you're a carpenter, your first chair you build is not going to be very good. But if you build 100 really bad chairs, your next one's probably going to be okay.
Yeah.
We've learned at least 100 things to not do next time. So yeah, I think when it comes to just releasing things, the phrase that always sticks in my mind is like the worst that they could say is no.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with getting some no's. It's okay.
And especially in the grand scale of things, like in the day and age we're in with the fear of AI and whatever, if you're going to release stuff and it's going to go nowhere, 5 years from now, does that really matter to you?
Yeah.
It's just, if you just get it out, the worst that happens is nobody cares. But if it's bringing you fulfillment to do that thing, then that's why you should be doing it anyway. Like if you're just in whatever you're in for validation, that's never going to get any better. And even if it does get better, if you're in this for validation and one day you get 10,000 plays, eventually that's not going to be enough.
Yeah.
I experience this myself all the time with YouTube. My last YouTube video is like one of the worst performing videos I've released in the last like 3 years. But, looking back on 5 or 6 years ago when I started my channel or something, if I got a video with 26,000 views, I would have shit my pants. But now I look at 26,000 views and I'm like, oh, that's terrible. And I'm like thinking of just deleting that video and pretending it never happened. But again, the worst people can say is no. And in this case, people saw the title and thumbnail and said no and whatever, but I had fun making the video. I thought it was a really interesting video. So cool. On to the next one. I guess.
Totally. And I think there's two things I wanted to bring up, and I may have just forgotten one, but one is, it's like in the creative industries in general, like you have to embrace the work. You know what I mean? You can't, like you said, you can't need the validation because it's super difficult and it's really easy to get defeated when I did remember my second point. The platforms are very quick to show you how you did good or how you did bad. YouTube Studio is going to tell you that you're a 10 out of 10 on your video.
Right.
Spotify is going to have that little less than 1,000. You're not going to
Yeah.
have any likes on your TikTok or whatever. It really, the way the world is, it's it's not a good place, or it's not a good time to need validation. You have to just have the confidence to make something because you want to make it,
Right.
I think. I want to ask you another kind of random question here. Would you consider yourself a creator or a musician these days?
Hmm. I don't know. Like, I feel like I've always been just more in like the creator realm because I just do creative stuff. And I
Yeah.
think it's just because I feel like I need to make things, but it always doesn't have to be just one thing. Like I'm very centric in music. Obviously, like that's a huge part of what I do, and that's kind of my bread and butter. But YouTube, I think, especially anymore, has become sort of a different creative outlet for me because, the numbers showed that the more I get away from doing, how to make sick bass or whatever, the better the videos perform because it's a part of a community that I'm very invested in. It's a community and an idea and a topic I'm very passionate about and very well versed in, but I get to approach it from a different angle in that the way that I see things is only the way that I could have seen them through the trials and tribulations it took for me to get where I am.
Right.
So by being able to utilize that, I think it was helpful to develop YouTube content that I think is more unique and refreshing and most importantly just more honest
Mm.
within that space. So YouTube anymore functions as that alternative outlet. If I'm making music, I'm making music. If I'm making a YouTube video, I'm making a YouTube video. But there's a lot of other stuff I do, cooking or making stuff in Blender for fun or goofing around in Photoshop and making like some art or playing with like, stable diffusion or something. Like I think all of these things are just varying creative outlets. They all exercise the same muscle set in my brain, so to speak. It just kind of comes down to, well, what do I feel like doing that day? And
Yeah.
it's nice because especially as I've separated the YouTube from the music aspects, it's been nice because then I get to invest more into each of them. I can put just as much passion into the music work and whatever as I do into the YouTube videos. So they're, I don't know, both more equally fulfilling now in that respect.
Well, it's hard to like, I guess, kind of combine them. Like if you want the music to work with the YouTube, you
Right.
kind of like there's compromise that happens on both sides, and by having those two spaces separated, it lets you
And it
excel.
can work. Like I think there are examples of YouTube where that works really well, but at the same time I think YouTube just as a medium isn't really meant about that. The best engagement on something like YouTube is giving people space to talk about the thing they care most about, which is often themselves. If you're running around going, "Look at me, look at what I'm doing, look at my music, look at my things." No one cares because who are you?
Yeah.
But, if you're opening a platform for a discussion, I mean, that's the nature of YouTube. That's a lot of what it's about.
Yeah.
So, there's pros and cons to every approach, but I think it also helps you maintain more of a healthy balance because it is, at least for me, it's extremely hard to do something of, say, making a video of, here's how I made a song, or let's write a song together. Here's my whole workflow, start to finish, of writing a song, scoring a scene or something. Because the nature of YouTube work, especially, is very performative. It has to be, at least to make, pretty compelling content, it has to be planned and at least loosely scripted. There's a lot of editing, there's a lot of things that go into making a video work. And I feel like I can't mentally be in both of those spaces at once,
Yeah.
other than like turning on a camera, hitting record, and leaving it in a corner. And is anyone really going to watch that video of, hey, let's write a song together today? And it's me in a studio for 4 hours, or longer sometimes, depending on the track or the cue. Is anyone going to watch that video where it's a camera off in a corner recording with like OBS recording my screen? Sure. And maybe at best, in my case, being more of like an established artist, it's let's say it's a couple thousand people. That video is going to get 3,000 views.
Yeah.
But is that truly a video that's worth making? Outside of something like Patreon, I guess. I wouldn't say it's worth my time to sit there and put that together and throw it up on the internet.
Well, that's the kind of thing. Yeah, that's the diehard fan,
Right. Because ultimately that's just eating up time in my day where I made a song and now I've got to like slap some video together out of it, put that together and put it on YouTube. I just, and that doesn't bring me any joy to do that.
No, no.
So the more I can separate the processes, I think the more I'm able to, put something into them that makes them work.
Well, you're always thinking about the camera. At least I've learned that since I started
Oh, yeah.
dabbling in YouTube and making the podcast. Just having the podcast on video now it's like I'm looking at this speaker over here and somebody's gonna judge me because I'm not looking at the camera. You know what I mean? So,
Right. Yeah. Or, you learn to sit there and watch your footage back when you're editing and you're like, what am I doing with my hands?
Right.
Why am I doing, or like, why am I sitting so awkward? Or like,
yeah.
oh shit, there was a booger in my mustache this whole time. Like now,
Well, now I'm definitely going to be
now I have to
self-conscious for the
reshoot
rest of
that
this.
whole. Oh yeah, I have a full like checklist of like hair and is everything all right? Are my glasses like smudged and gross? Do I have any boogers? Is there dog hair on my shirt or something?
That's amazing. Well, I guess the root of that question was, I'd like because I identified as an engineer and mixer, like that was like my thing for 15 years, and then I started this podcast during the pandemic and started dabbling with videos. And I just feel like more musicians and producers should consider maybe identifying as a creator, because if you think about all the things that we're doing, you might be a producer making sample packs, or like you're doing so much more than the one thing that you might identify as. And I just
Right.
feel like it could be kind of freeing to just say, I make stuff. Like you said, you like to make stuff, you follow your interests. And I think more people should just
Right.
do that.
Well, and I think it's hard too when you're investing, all your eggs into one basket, so to speak, of if you are just a musician, that is all that you do, that can really get old after
Yeah.
a while.
Yeah.
Speaking from experience, like when I was younger and was in bands and toured, and that was all I did was just play guitar and stuff in different bands and, played shows 5-6 nights a week and did all the tours, played festivals, did all that kind of stuff. And it was just miserable after a while.
It's repetitive and I don't know, you get stuck, I think. Because
Yeah.
I guess the other thing that I've found is the more things that I do that aren't engineering or mixing, the kind of more stimulated I get. And then when it's time to sit down and do a mix, there's a lot more stuff going on. There's a lot more
Right.
things firing. I'm happier. I'm more energized. I'm like, this was fun because I had a good time making a YouTube video that 7 people are going to watch.
And I think maybe to your point there, like as you invest time into something else creatively, you're able to sometimes even take ideas from that creative realm into other things.
Yeah.
With, YouTube, for example, that's learning about pacing and telling a story and things like that. So I'm able to sometimes take some of those ideas and apply them to music or other things, or even skills. There's a lot of skills that transfer between these things. Making YouTube videos and editing music underneath them was really helpful to learn how to write better music for like library music stuff.
Yeah.
Because video editing tools are significantly more crude than what we have access to in a DAW. So by editing a gajillion videos, I was then able to learn how to make better music if I want to license my music elsewhere, because I have a deeper understanding of the tools of a video editor. And I think as an artist in general, I think that's the best way to approach your life as a creative. And I think the new Rick Rubin book talks something about that, about living as an artist and how it's not about necessarily doing things. It's just a way of being aware of the world.
Yeah.
I need to read that book at some point because everyone keeps recommending it to me. But I think that's the way to understand it. Is it's not about investing everything into just one thing. It's about learning to access that creative ability and utilize that in whatever way you see fit at the time.
It's like anything. Exercising that muscle keeps it growing. And even if that exercise
Right.
is outside your norm. Like, I mean, I know so many producers that swear you have to cook. Like, you're not a producer unless you can cook. But it's stimulating. It's like you said, you cook. I do some cooking. It's fun. You know, when it comes out in the end and you're like, this is great. It just keeps you going. The Rick Rubin book is good. I'm about halfway through, by the way. So
Okay. Yeah.
you should check it
Yeah.
out.
Everyone's recommended it to me, but then, I just got to like also find the time to read another book.
Well, the Rick Rubin book is interesting because my take so far, which it kind of applies to something I wanted to talk about, is that he's a music producer and that's what he's known as. But he's written a book that really tries to make creativity like a way of life in a way that I
Right.
think is going to appeal to the masses. And so I'll use that to transition to kind of the idea of appealing to the masses with your music and YouTube, et cetera. Like I'm sure as a YouTuber, there's videos that you've made that have been designed to hit the algorithm and bring people in. There's
Mhm.
videos that you've made that you wanted to make and maybe they hit, maybe they don't. What do you think it's like for an artist to walk that line? Like if you're making a record, can you still do that?
I think it just comes down to like when you ask yourself what the goal is with what you're doing. And I think it was maybe John Mayer that talked about the idea of I write one for me, one for them, something like that.
Hmm.
So I would say as an artist, musician, YouTuber, whatever you're doing, it just kind of has to come down to what the purpose of that thing is. Am I making an album to serve my existing fans? Am I making an album to express some new creative ideas I want to explore? Am I making a new album just to make some money? Like you just have to be honest about that. And I think the more you're able to dial that in, the better you're able to not only execute the idea, but develop the idea in a way that's going to make it work
Yeah.
for a certain intention rather than just sort of throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah. Well, it kind of makes me think about when I was a kid, starting to play guitar. People would call each other sellouts. It's like, oh, they signed, they're sellout. I don't even know if people say that anymore. Do you even think that applies? Like, because if you're gonna, like you said, make a record for money and you know that you're gonna sell this piece of music to a library or you're gonna do this specifically for a brand,
Right.
do you think that matters? I don't think it does. If it enables your creative goal,
I mean, it's just people making a career, I
right?
don't look at an electrician and be like, that guy's just cutting holes in drywall and splicing wires together. What a sellout. You could have been an artist. I think that's so stupid. Many of the most successful musicians I know do stuff like that, where they just write music that goes in libraries and it gets put on the Real Housewives of Dubuque, Iowa or something, and they make a great living at doing that. And some of the music they write is super generic and boring, but they enjoy it and they make great money doing it. And I can't fault them for that. I don't really think there's, I don't know, selling out anymore. I think it's kind of like YouTube comments and stuff. I feel like most of the time when people are mad about these types of things, it's just because people don't like having a mirror held up to them.
True.
When
True.
you see that your friend got signed, it's not that your friend sold out and did the right thing. It's just that you're mad that you didn't get signed
Exactly.
because you feel that you deserve it more, because you feel that you're a better whatever, so on and so on. And I think most of those issues are just projecting. It's just people being salty because what a privilege that would be to make money at the thing I love the most, let alone to make a stable financial career out of it.
Yes.
So it's really easy to project a lot of feelings on that sort of thing. And I don't know. I can't fault anyone for just doing the thing that works. You know what I mean? I see that with YouTube all the time. I know a lot of YouTubers now, and especially the ones that aren't in the music space. Some of them can make ungodly amounts of money. And I think it's because sometimes they do really generic videos.
Yeah.
But really generic videos reach a lot of people, and a lot of people reaching your videos means it attracts really big sponsorships.
Yeah.
But they love making videos. So you know, I may not be very much into the new Mac makeup palette or whatever, but if someone's going to make a 10-minute video on it, it's going to get 700,000 views and they're going to have a ton of fun doing their makeup on a camera. Like, whatever, dude, enjoy. Like, that's cool.
That is one of the things that in my transition to bringing this to YouTube, this podcast that I started in January, is that I found that what I wanted to do with the show, like it just doesn't really connect in that format. and you're like, well, what do I do? Do I butcher this thing that I've been making for 2 years just
Right.
so I can get some extra clicks, or do I just live with the fact that it's going to be what it is, and sometimes it's going to work better than other times? And
And I think there's a balance to that where, like I said, my latest YouTube video was just an absolute disaster. But, that happens every once in a while. And I think
yeah,
there is a balance you have to strike in that if you want to be in the arena, you have to play the game.
it's true.
Um, YouTube's a huge part of that with kind of how it works, yellow journalism being a big example of it with you need to have clickbaity headlines. You need to have really bright eye-catching thumbnails. You need to make subjects into videos that are, colorful and quickly paced and so on.
Yeah,
You need to have good editing. You need to understand how to add music and such, or you need to have a really original idea. But ultimately, the way to succeed on YouTube is to appeal to the most people.
yeah,
So in my case, looking at my latest video that was about kind of three key theories of philosophy in music and its relation to emotion. Where does music get its feeling? I was really pissed off that that video didn't do so well because originally it was doing really well and then it just died. But then
mm,
I look at it again and say, well, ultimately that's just a subject I'm really interested in, but not a lot of people care about.
right.
26,000 people watched it or whatever, but that's an arena full of people that watched my video about something really nichey and specific. But the better video to make might have been why you're ruining your career as a creative and what to do about it, and I think that's a video I should probably make next. So there is a way to take the things you're interested in and package them to do well. You just have to be willing to make a little bit of a compromise in order to play that game if you really want to do it big. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But at the same time, you have to stay true to your vision. I think it's the Mr. Beast quote of if you want to be Mr. Beast, you don't make a Mr. Beast video,
it's true.
right? If I want to be the next big gaming channel and I really like who's that Irish guy, Jacksepticeye, right? If
Yeah,
I love that and I love gaming, if I go on and dye my hair, I think his hair's green or something. If I dye my hair green and make gaming videos where I yell really loud in an Irish accent, I'm just going to be Diet Jacksepticeye.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not really doing anything. I'm not bringing anything to the table. So the more you're able to leverage that relationship you have with that thing you're talking about, whatever that might be, whether it's finance or real estate or music or I don't know, Play-Doh or something, the more you leverage your perspective on that and put it into content, the more it's going to pick up because you're going to be providing something new in this sea of noise. But at the same time, you have to play the game of, I guess, legit bait is kind of what I refer to it as, coming up with a good title. And I don't
yeah,
think that that's a bad thing. And I think that's just an evolution in YouTube with how it has to be. The best content floats to the top. But and Veritasium did a really excellent video on this, but if you're making all these YouTube videos and you're packaging with crappy titles, even though they might be really, really accurate as to the contents of the video,
yeah,
it's just not going to work. You have to earn that click. And that might take a little bit of a more sensational thing, but there's a difference between clickbait and a good headline. You
true.
know what I mean?
Yeah,
And that's part of anything. If you want to be a rock band, writing really weird esoteric math core or whatever is probably not going to be as successful as writing another, Nickelback style album or something.
yeah,
It's just not going to appeal to enough people more often than not. There are always exceptions to these things, but still, I think, you have to bend into the game a little bit if you want to be part of it, just because it takes people to sustain a career, in this case, fans of artists. And, creating obscure ambient noiseescapes is probably not going to give you enough fans to pay your mortgage as compared to like contemporary pop music. You know what I mean?
you also have to think of yourself as like, as being the user. Like, think about
Right.
what you click on, or like when you watch a YouTube video or you listen to music. Like, What made you jump on that?
And that was a huge part of the pivot in my own content, was just understanding what are the videos I'm watching, but
Yeah.
then asking those further questions. Well, why am I watching them? Why do I click on these things? What is it about these videos that appeal to me? And then from there, what is it about these 5 or 6 creators I really enjoy? Is it their editing? Is it their voiceover style? Is it their music cues that they're using? Is it just the visuals and such? And how do I take these things that I enjoy and place them into my own content? Because that, I think, elevated me a lot as a creator on YouTube, just as a platform. But it also put my channel into its own very unique space. Because although I am, I guess, to a degree, ripping off the channels I really enjoy, that's, that's the fundamental aspect of creation as an artist. You're just an amalgamation of the things you're influenced by and enjoy.
Yeah.
It's not a one-to-one copy of anything. It's taking the things you like, leaving the things that you don't, and putting it all together.
Yep.
And then adding your own little bit of fairy dust on top, I guess.
Yeah. So I wanted to go back to, you mentioned kind of like having, like, I guess, peer envy. We're going back
Hmm.
like 5-10 minutes.
Sure.
I totally relate to that because, prior to when I was like early 30s, I found myself being super frustrated with, like, even like friends of mine. Like, they would work on a record where I'm like, fuck, I wish I worked on that record, as opposed to
Right.
like going to get beers and being like, dude, I'm so stoked that you did that record. It's more like there's a lot of jealousy in this industry,
Yeah.
and I think it holds a lot of people back. Like you were saying, it's like you see a mirror, and I think as soon as you realize that that's what's happening when you get frustrated with somebody, that it's actually because you want that thing. I think that really kind of unlocks the door to trying to navigate to your own, like, sense of happiness. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like you said, you can't be Mr. Beast by trying to be Mr. Beast. You'll just be frustrated. You have to
Right.
find what makes Venus Theory happy. What's your success, and then that go with that. So
Yeah, I think it's really hard to navigate those feelings of pure jealousy because of course everyone wants to be successful, right?
yeah,
Everyone who wants a career in music wants to be a successful musician. They want to be a career musician. We don't want to write one song and then be done with it, right? And it's really hard to get over that because you are going to die, frankly. And when you're 19, you're going to live long probably. And then, by the time you're 28, your friends got signed and you didn't. And, clock's running out because by the time you're 35, you're a little old to be in music, aren't you? And so on. And it's kind of that running joke of when you're 18 and in a band, it's super cool. When you're 25 and in a band, it's all right, cool. When you're 35 and in a band, a little weird. 45 and in a band, you know, unless you're, Metallica or something,
yeah,
obviously. But if you're just like some random 47-year-old dude hustling CDs outside of an Arby's,
it's
it's
not
not a
good.
good look, right? So I think, yeah, the root of creative envy really, I don't know, mostly comes down to just your own definition of success. And I think it's important to understand that it's okay if that changes. And that's not something we're really taught. And I think that's largely been escalated by social media and the buy my PDF on how to be a better Spotify player count, whatever. Like get this, that, like that YouTube video that's a 10-hour video about compression.
There's a
If
YouTube
you
video that's a
watch,
10-hour video about
I
compression.
swear to God, look it up right now. 10-hour. I saved it because I wanted to make a whole diatribe on it, but I gave up on it. What is it called? How to use compression, 10-hour course from mastering.com.
Wow.
And I think that in this age of social media and constant exposure to our peers and whatever, it's created this idea of, I don't even know how to explain it, this like unrequited solutionism to everything. Where if you watch this 10-hour video, you're finally going to get it. You're going to compress the hell out of that next mix and it's going to be awesome. And if you download this free PDF, that's the solution to why you're not fucking happy about anything. Right. And I think that's where this all just gets exacerbated so much because we go on Instagram and, oh, I see Ben Jordan, good friend of mine posted, but he got 2,000 likes and mine only got 1,000 likes. Damn it, Ben. Why would you do this to me? But it all just comes down to, why are you doing it in the first place? And I think the example I always give is just, understanding why you got into this as an amateur to begin with, but also just if you got rid of everything you had right now, like if I deleted my YouTube channel, I sold all my camera gear, I sold all my instruments and whatever, I can guarantee you inside a week, I'm going to go buy like another guitar or something. I'm going to buy a camera and I'm just going to start taking pictures and making videos and making music again, just because I really, really like it.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
just, in my case, it happened to work out to where my music is how I pay my mortgage, right? And my YouTube channel is how I have a savings account. That is extraordinarily lucky.
It's a win.
But if I took all that away, I would have a job, as I did, and as I do. Like, I have a day job doing stuff. Some of it's really not the most fascinating work in the world, but it's just a way to get by. And I'm very lucky that all of it is related to music and creative stuff. But
Yeah.
if I set myself back 5, 6 years when I started my channel and whatever, I worked a day job, I worked overtime, I had my own music stuff I made on the side for fun. I put it on SoundCloud. It got 0 plays because no one cared. And I started making YouTube videos for fun. I made YouTube videos for years before anyone cared who I was or what my channel was about, because I just really like doing it.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be the same for anyone who is a career creative. If I went to Ben's house and burned it down, not going to do that. But if I did, Ben's going to do the same thing. He's going to go buy a camera and buy a piano or another one of his Renrocos or something and just start making music again and start making videos. And I think that stands for just about anybody who's really into this, because I think that passion is what translates through to a point to where you can eventually build a sustainable career out of it. The
Yeah.
problem is that timeline is entirely unknown, and it will always be, because there is no system to get there. There is no YouTube video that is going to teach you how to be a full-time musician. There is no YouTube video that is going to show you how you quit your job and become a full-time wedding photographer. There is no PDF in the world that is going to help you start that food truck business. The only thing that does is just doing it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's the problem with a lot of those courses and things like that, is they don't explain that idea that I cannot replicate this again.
Yeah.
Like, if I had to start a YouTube channel over today, I could do that. Would it get to the point that my Venus Theory channel is at now? I have no idea. I think in my case, just a very specific set of things happened, and that's how it got to where it is. And same with my music career. If I had to start over today, could I get to the exact level I'm at? I don't know. There are certain aspects of my career I think I could replicate, like becoming a sound designer and doing all that sort of stuff. But, growing a big YouTube following, I have no idea. And that's the critical factor. A lot of this stuff kind of sneaks under the table, is they can give you, the steps it took, but none of these things are applicable to you probably.
You never know how long it's going to take to get there. Like, and it's
Right.
all the parts of the journey that like come together that ultimately create, what you are when you're in your 30s, what you are in your 40s. It's like, as you go, you just keep growing. Question: Are you ever frustrated? Well, you enjoy it, so maybe not. If somebody
Well,
identifies you as a YouTuber versus a sound designer, does that kind of frustrate you or surprise you when you're like, "Oh, I'm a YouTuber"? Like, I actually am a musician, sound designer.
I mean, yeah, it doesn't bother me at all, because there's a lot of people that know me only for my music. There's a lot of people that know me only for my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
It
It's
doesn't really bother me anyway. It's just like, oh, cool. I made something that you enjoyed.
yeah.
That's pretty neat.
I think some people are afraid. I know when I started a podcast, people were like, "Oh, well, like, why are you doing that?" And I definitely have people
Right.
that don't know that I have a professional music career. They think I just have a podcast. And I think that holds people back from trying something outside their box when they're like, "Well, I'm afraid somebody will think I'm that thing." Well, I was like, "Well, if you
Right.
enjoy that thing, well, then fuck it, do it."
Well, and I get that all the time. Certainly,
Yeah.
people are like, oh, you're just a YouTuber. You don't do anything. You don't know anything. You're just a sellout. And it's like, I have worked with every brand in your DAW probably a dozen times. I have a studio full of gear that I actually make music with, music that has been featured in lots of different things. If you took 4 seconds to Google me, you would find out that like, oh, yeah, that guy's done a lot of stuff.
It's done a lot of stuff.
But I think it's just, again, it's that mirror being held up where,
Yeah.
when someone sees you're successful at something, they're going to try and find any hole in that they can in order to self-validate.
Yeah. We're running low on time. I wanted to just leave the YouTube kind of space and talk about the other things you do. You do a ton of shit, sound design, composition, ad work. I think I heard you say somewhere that you were doing a score for a video game.
Mhm.
Did you plan on doing this many things, or they all came together and you're like, "Oh, I'm so diversified."
I mean, I try to keep yeah, I try to keep things pretty diversified just in the event that like if one thing isn't working out as well one month, then it doesn't matter. If my
Yeah.
YouTube AdSense goes down, I don't care because I have plenty of security in the 73,000 other things I'm doing.
Yeah.
I think that's just a smarter way of doing business, and I think that's a big part of what it takes to sustain a creative career. There are very, very few people I know that are a full-time artist.
Yeah.
The people I know that are artists who, make a career off their art often also do graphic design for corporations, or they do design consulting for upstarts or whatever, or they happen to also do web design on the side. And I think it's just out of necessity.
Yeah.
That's extraordinarily rare that you're going to make all of your income, especially consistently, off of just one aspect of what you do. So I just try to keep the pipelines open because it helps make sure that I'm able to, eat and stuff. I'm known to enjoy doing that. Having a house, somewhere to a bed
That's
is a
right.
good thing to have sometimes. Electricity, also, kind of a neat thing. Um, so I think that's part of why I do that, but I think it's also because all of it is just interesting to me.
Yeah.
I enjoy doing sound design. I enjoy doing composing. I enjoy making my own music. I enjoy making YouTube videos. I enjoy making videos for other companies and stuff. So it's just part of that creative energy. If an opportunity comes my way that sounds like something I'd be interested in doing, then why wouldn't I do it?
It's true.
If someone's going to see it and take a giant shit all over me for doing a video for some other company, that's fine. Because fact of the matter is they chose me and not you, so I don't care.
uh, how do you balance it all? Do you like what's your day look like? Are you like I
It
do
really
YouTube on
varies.
Mondays? It's all over the place.
Yeah, it's all over the place because it just kind of depends on what's happening that month. So I kind of just try and have a system in place of with YouTube, I generate just a bunch of ideas and then I'll whittle those down into which ideas are going to make good videos, which of these are going to make great videos, and which of these can I pitch to you in a title and a thumbnail.
Yeah.
And then from there, once I have my core ideas that are really something I want to do or something I think will do well, which isn't always the case, but whatever, I'll put those together and then I'll start scripting them and gathering assets, doing any research for them or whatever, and then I'll start filming. So I kind of write in batches, I film in batches, I edit in batches, so that way I have a couple weeks of content ready to go at any given time. And similarly with projects, I just have my wife who helps me with that now. She gets in all the emails and project offers and so on. That all gets scheduled out. Okay, so if I'm going to do this project, that's going to take me 6 days to complete or something, let's say. So let's block off 6 days to do that. And then I have this many days left over this month to work on videos or Patreon stuff or
Yeah.
something like that. And that's a pretty helpful system. It's extremely chaotic, but I think that's just because there is no better way to organize it. Because especially in, creative industries, things are just flying by really, really quickly, or things change at the last possible minute or
Yeah.
whatever. So it's kind of a system of just keeping things separate in, here's my client work, here are my video ideas, here's the other stuff I'm working on. So where can I fit these in? How long are these going to take me? But I do try to keep it so that I'm only doing one thing at a time,
Mm.
which, has its pros and cons, but I think it's helpful for me just because then I don't get so scatterbrained working on 6 different things actively at the same time.
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm just able to dedicate 100% of my focus to that one thing, then I know I'm going to get it done, but I'm also going to be happy with the result. If I'm only able to put 40% of my effort into this and 10 into this and so on, then I just don't feel like I'm able to really give something my all, which
Yeah.
I guess to a degree stems from some sort of privilege of being able to be more selective about things, but also be in a position to where I can only focus on one thing at a time. But again, I think it's also out of necessity because as the projects and the clients get bigger and bigger and bigger, you can't be dicking around with it.
Yeah.
Like
No,
there's
totally. Totally.
there's a very big difference in the expectations of $100 client as versus a $10,000 client, right?
Yeah. Totally. Totally. Well, and once you reach that point where people are coming to you, they know what they want, they're willing to pay more for whatever service you're providing. It also puts you in that position to be able to like look at your calendar and be like, all right, I have to film on Monday and Tuesday and edit. So I can tell this person I can do this thing on Wednesday and Thursday. When like when you're earlier in your career, you might throw your YouTube out the door and just be like, okay, yeah, I'll do this for you on Monday.
Right.
And then that's how like the thing that you want to do or the other thing you need to do that's not client facing gets like shoved down. That's how people don't start an idea. They're always like,
Yeah.
please the client, please the client. So,
Or you're just constantly in that iteration phase and you're not really ending up seeing many things through. Or if you do, you're doing it poorly.
yeah, yeah,
You're doing it just to say it's done rather than doing it to get the job done.
yes, yeah, yeah,
And I think
yeah,
that's a really important distinction. And I guess as well, the thing that helps me is just sort of looking at things with like a minimum 70% fulfillment of, and I think I borrowed this from Struthless, a YouTuber, but it's kind of a system I've used for a while anyway. I think he called it the 70% rule or something like that. If you're organizing all your offers and ideas, I kind of try to do it on a scale of 1 to 10, basically, where things are a 1 to a 4 or a 5 to a 7 or an 8 to a 10. And I'll pick and choose and throw things in those categories. And only the things that are an 8 out of 10 or above are the ones I'll actually do. Because most of the time, the other stuff is either just not worth doing, or it's something that's pretty replaceable, or it's just something that's not a good fit.
yeah,
Unless it's something I'm truly interested in and passionate about, why would I do it?
yeah,
Because if I really just need to make money, then I'll go get a job. I would be willing to take a pay cut to do a project that I know is really going to be interesting to me or challenge me in a new way rather than just, cash out and do generic, boring stuff that doesn't, tickle my fancy any.
right.
Which,
So,
especially in the realm of YouTube, is really easy to do. It'd be easy for me to just completely sell out on my channel, do a bunch of mobile game ads and VPN ads or something, and, make gobs of money. Like I could probably make, if I was willing to do that, I would probably make more money in a year than I've ever seen in my entire life. Because that's just extraordinarily valuable to companies to have, people with a following. But why would I do that when it's just not going to bring anything to the table for me?
yeah, yeah. Well, your ranking system that was based on like how excited you are about the project. Is
Right.
that
Yeah.
okay? Yeah, yeah,
So if something's like a 5 out of 10, it's just kind of like, like I could take it or leave it. Sounds kind of fun, but like,
yeah,
kind of done that before, or just like, it's not really my usual thing. But then, something that's an 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 would be, oh wow, that's a really high paying gig from a major client that's going to further my career a lot. Or, oh, that's a super interesting offer for something I've wanted to do for a long time. And it may not pay great, but now I get to do something new and maybe learn something. Or, oh wow, that's a really weird, challenging gig. I
yeah,
wonder if I could do that. Whereas, 1 out of 10 might just be like, oh, this is stupid and I don't want to do it. Or it's just, and that's just like big corporate generic junk and I don't care.
yeah. What's an example of a 10 out of 10 for you that's not like that's not financially based?
I think the things that interest me the most, it's always something that's either going to challenge me or poses some kind of risk or,
Mm,
challenges even just my assumptions about either my own abilities or about my process
yeah,
or something I've never done before or just something I've wanted to do, something I've never had an opportunity for that I really want to try. Even if it's something that's out of my wheelhouse, if it's something interesting, I would be willing to do it and fail at it, and that's okay. Like it might work out, but I know that if I want to make it work, I'm really going to have to push myself to make that happen.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot more valuable and a lot more fun and a lot more fulfilling than just like stuff that you can phone in,
Hmm.
you know? And every once in a while, like you have to take gigs like that, especially earlier on, just to make ends meet and whatever, and, you know, grow your client base. And every once in a while, I'll do things like that if there's just not anything particularly fascinating on the table.
Yeah.
But, you know, if it ever comes down to it, it's always working on those like 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10 ideas. Those are always the ones I do first before I'll even consider the other stuff.
That's a great system.
It's also what helps just to keep me fulfilled and engaged and interested in what I'm doing. Because otherwise you're just kind of doing the same stuff over and over.
Yeah.
You know, imagine going into your studio and using the same plugins every day to write the same song at the same tempo, you know, the exact same thing all the time, or just only variations on it. So I think that's nice to be able to do stuff in that sort of system because there's always something new or at least challenging or interesting on the table rather than just having to go through the motions again.
So many people talk about how they only work on projects that they're passionate about, but if you're not actually like reflecting on it and like attaching a number to it, I think it's almost hard to actually do that. I mean, I could tell
Right.
people that I work on only things I'm passionate about, but if I were to sit down for 5 minutes and rank the things I did over the last like 6 weeks, 50-50, that's a true statement.
Right. And that's kind of the thing is it's a good way to look back at it and just say, you know, if the last 5 things I've done haven't really brought me any fulfillment, then like what the fuck am I doing? Right? You know, if
Yeah.
it because that's the thing, like I'm passionate about music, right? And I get a lot of offers to do music related things, and I could do all of them. And it's easy to get excited about all of them, especially earlier on. But not every gig is a good gig. But how do you quantify or qualify what a good gig is? What are the metrics that make that happen? Is it the money? Is it the fulfillment? Is it the name recognition? Is it whatever? And it kind of goes back to like my earlier point here about just when you're looking at things to grow as an artist or creator, it just comes down to what the goal is. Is it to get more views? Is it to get more money? Is it to get more subscribers? Is it to build a better portfolio? So
Yeah.
on and so on. And yeah, it's easy to get caught up in just saying that, like, oh, I got an offer to make music. Sweet. And then you do it and you do all the things that come your way. And you're, yeah, like you said, you're technically doing things you're passionate about, but how truly passionate are you about doing that thing?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know. I just think life is way too short to just do things for the sake of pumping stuff through the pipeline of sludge, you know?
Well, okay, here's a question. How long do you think it took you to start to think like this?
Mm, you know, like I've always been a pretty stubborn jackass about things. Like I was a very hard-headed kid, and I've always kind of been that way of like I'm gonna do things my way, or I'm just not gonna do them.
Okay.
Or if there are rules and I don't like them, I'm just not gonna follow them because that's stupid and I don't agree with it. So you know, that is to say, my teachers hated me uh,
Yeah.
because I was just like, meh, I don't care. And same thing, you know, like in school, if it was like a homework assignment, I didn't care. I just wouldn't do it, and they, you know, we're gonna give you an F, and okay,
Like, whatever, I don't
it
like this one.
doesn't mean anything to me. Like, go ahead and fail me, enjoy. So I think, you know, I've always been pretty particular about these sorts of things and pretty stubborn and set in my ways with that. But I think I wasn't really able to develop it into a system that was really helpful until, you know, doing this stuff for a while professionally. Because, like I talked about earlier, it's hard to get your feet into something and immediately know what all of it means.
Yeah.
So I think it's, you know, having done a lot of great gigs, a lot of good gigs, and a lot of bad gigs, and a lot of really terrible gigs, that I was able to take away from those experiences something that I was then able to develop into more of a system to prevent myself from doing more bad things. You know, I've accepted jobs from big clients where I just completely failed, or, you know, didn't meet the expectations, or just the client was an asshole. You
Mhm.
know, been there, done that.
Yeah.
So then doing that enough times, you start to see through when an email comes in or when an opportunity comes your way, like, what is this going to do for me? Is this something that I've seen before? You know, what is my gut telling me here? And, you know, how is this going to fall into the grand scheme of things? So it took, a solid career to get to that point. But I think these are all things we innately know and understand. It's just one of those things that's really hard to put into words a lot of the
Yeah.
times.
Yeah. No, I agree. I did want to ask you, since it sounds like you kind of like to push your boundaries and get excited about things that you haven't done or things that are challenging. How do you deal with failure? Do you kind of embrace it and learn from it? Do you get mad for a couple days and then move on? Because I feel like so many people in this industry, they hear no, 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 and then they're like, fuck it, I'm just going to go do something else.
Right. Yeah. And I think, honestly, that's the thing that separates the people that make a career out of this from the people that don't. If you just throw your hands up and walk away, then like you are never cut out for this to begin with.
That's true.
Because you are
Very
going to
true.
fail a lot and
Yeah.
everything's going to go wrong a lot. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's all going to come crashing down, but then it's going to be fine again. The only way to deal with failure is to some degree like a level of stoicism, I suppose, where just, if it's not something that worked out, it wasn't meant to work out anyway.
Mm.
And if it was beyond your control, then there's no sense in throwing a fit about it. But I think the other thing is just learning to use failure as a positive and understanding that if you can take away something from it, even if it is just one thing that, oh, that client was an asshole. Okay, well, now I don't want to work with people that I don't like working with. Or, you worked on a project and they were just like, the direction for the music just isn't working anymore. We're going to hire someone else. Thanks for your time. Goodbye.
Yeah.
And it's, and as with anyone, like I get upset, I get pissed off when things like that happen. Anyone would, especially when it's a project where like you've invested 4 months of your life into something and then they're like, we're going in a different direction.
Oh.
Or, oh, our company is bankrupt. Bye. Like that stuff happens all the time. And I think it's how you deal with those things that translates into how you're able to make a career out of it, because these things
I
are going to
agree.
happen all the time to varying degrees.
Mhm.
There's a difference between a mix that you were just kind of not happy with and a client project that was just a massive failure. But yeah, being able to look and do that sort of post mortem on everything, even if it was something that worked out really well, what did I take away from this project? What did I learn? What could I have done better? What really worked out? Was something maybe new that I tried? Did that work? How did that affect the process and so on? And, I think it's always back to the phrase my dad says of just, if all else, you learned what not to do.
Yeah.
Sometimes things just don't work. And if you can look back on it and take something out of that, then great. It's like making music. It's easy. I just had a conversation with someone about this yesterday. It's easy to get caught up on a song where you sit there mixing it for weeks and tweaking all the stuff and doing all the things and buying more plugins and watching more, dudes with glasses on YouTube tell you how to compress for 10 hours and think that there's going to be an answer. But sometimes a song just doesn't work. And as a musician, how many times have you made a song and just thrown it away? How
Mhm.
many times have you opened the DAW, started laying something down, and you didn't even hit save?
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
okay. Not every song is going to work. And if you're able just to let something go and maybe take something away from it, of just the mix wasn't working. Okay. Why wasn't the mix working? It was like really bassy and flubby. Okay. So is that an issue of mixing? Is that your technical skill? Is it maybe something with the sounds? Could it be something in the arrangement? So maybe we take that away next time. If I want to use super saws and I want to use a string orchestra at the same time, it's probably not a great idea, right?
It's not.
No matter what, that is an equally valid lesson to anything else you're going to take away from a session, right? If you just learned one thing, now next time you go into a song, we know don't mix super saws with the orchestra at the same time if you really want to hear a clear distinction between the two,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's the only way to look at failure, is just, it's a system of progression. It's necessary, it's painful, but if you're able to evolve from it, that's what's going to be the most helpful thing to do.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
helpful thing to do is to grow from it and not to just throw your toys on the floor and stamp your feet and be like, I suck and everything's terrible. That might feel good in the moment, but it's not productive.
No, the post-mortem concept is great. I mean, everybody should just take a minute to reflect on the ups and the downs of things. I'm not even gonna elaborate on that answer because I thought that answer was epic. So yeah. I gotta ask you one or two nerdy questions before we close.
Sure.
You've got a lot of keyboards.
Yep.
Are they all set up and ready to go? Can you just like
Mhm.
create and walk anywhere? And
Yeah, so I have my main MIDI controller in front of me here. This is the Casio Privia PXS7000, I believe is the model. It's a big, fully weighted 88 key keyboard. It's beautiful. Like, I love the look of it. And honestly, that was like 80% of the reason I wanted it, just for like the aesthetics, but it plays amazing. So that's hooked up here on my desk. One of these days, I need to just do like a studio breakdown or something. But this is then hooked into my computer, which has a MIDI interface. So that MIDI interface then splits off to all of my desktop synths and other stuff that's over here and hooked up. So that way I can, play this, but activate those as needed. That's all also synced up to the interface with the clock. So that way I can run sequences off these and whatever. The Polybrute over here is also hooked up directly, and it also has a MIDI out from it. So in the event I don't want the weighted keys, I can use this as another MIDI controller with more synth action. And as well, this one has a mod wheel, which the Casio doesn't. So
Mm,
if I need more of a traditional MIDI controller, the Polybrute doubles as my other MIDI controller. And then I have a Sparrow 5x5 on my desk, which is 5 pots and 5 faders. Those are just MIDI, and that's plugged into the computer as well. So that way I have a kind of a control surface for automating or doing stuff with. And then on my desk, I have the Waldorf Iridium and the Roland SH4D currently, and then the Polybrute. So I have kind of one big workstation sound designery synth. The SH4D, I just really like the different engines on, and it has the drum synthesizer on it. So it's kind of like my drum machine slash other stuff, because it does like
yeah.
Juno sounds and other things like that. And then the Polybrute's just my analog workhorse. And then I've got a big rack of stuff behind me over there, and another 2 racks of gear just off to the front walls here.
And
And
those
that's
are
just
active, ready to
varying.
go.
No, those
Okay.
are just unplugged. I just don't have the mental capacity to wire all that up.
20 keyboards. Yeah.
So that's just kind of other stuff that I use, but don't always need immediate access to. So the stuff that's on my desk and within my reach is stuff I know that I'm going to use in pretty much every session.
Yeah. Okay.
So this other stuff is just like, oh, hey, this track really needs some big, crazy analog, screechy FM stuff. So then I'll go grab like the PWM Malevolent, or, oh, I wish this had some cooler reverb effects. So then I'll go grab like the Microcosm pedal over there and slap it on and wire that in, or, the 303 or other modules and stuff I've got sitting around. So the other stuff is just accessible when I need it, but not wired in, because that would just be a pain. And I don't have enough ins and outs, because I don't have a big mixing board or anything in here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but that's why, yeah, I'm working on setting up a new interface, I think next, which has more ins and outs. So that way I can maybe wire up a couple extra things on my desk again, if I convince myself to do it. Because also, being more of a minimalist, I don't like having too much stuff on
Mm,
my desk, because I
yeah.
find it's just distracting from, getting things done. But that also would be set up to where I could get my pedal board probably somewhere over here. So that way I could easily reamp, synths and plugins and stuff through my pedal collection, just because, it'd be nice to be able to more actively use that. And I've been thinking about getting a small Euro rack case as well, because I have a couple modules and stuff that just companies have sent me for the channel and whatever. And then I've got a couple I bought that I don't know why I bought them, because I don't have a case for them. But yeah, so I've thought about getting a small Euro rack case just to put up somewhere, just to have. And then I've got my microphones and stuff, and then a cabinet with cables and microphones and other odds and ends.
Nice. And is it all set up to work with the camera rig too? Like if you're going to do some kind of synth video, or do you have to kind of take a second to plug that in?
Yeah, I don't really do any like gear videos or anything like that anymore. But if and when I do need to do something like that, it is all kind of pre-configured to where
Okay.
it works that way. So all the stuff I do with my camera, I have a microphone that goes on the camera and records directly into there. And then I'll just use like OBS to record anything on my computer, whether that's the screen or the audio.
Gotcha.
So that way, I can just sync them up in post. So I don't have it all hooked up to where I'm running like the camera directly into OBS or anything. It's all just separate, but both rigs are ready to go whenever I need them. So if I do need to do both things at once, I have, a system in place to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's the joy of having your own. Everybody works at home now, and it's
Right.
like that's the best part about having a setup is it's built the way you want. It's like when I go studio to studio, it always
And I think
sucks.
that's the funny thing about a lot of the YouTube channels too, is it's funny because I feel like you can almost look at certain YouTube channels and see, whether they're synth people or studio people or whatever. You can almost see by looking at, how their studio set up, who are people or who are the people that actually make music and who are the people that just have it set up to look really nice.
Yes.
So that
Yeah.
always kind of cracks me up. But I think, that's the thing with the studio is it's not about having all the flashy stuff and whatever. It's just about having a system and a setup that works for getting things done, whatever the thing it is that you
Yeah.
do may be.
Yeah.
And in my case, I've invested a lot more time and a lot of money into like the aesthetics of this room, but that's also just out of necessity because I film a lot of my videos up here. So like again, it's part of just playing the YouTube game. Would I have done all this if I didn't have a YouTube channel? Probably not. I
Yeah.
would have done some of it because I think it's important to have a space that's inspiring to you, but
Yeah.
I definitely wouldn't have gone this overboard to make it look and feel the way that it does. But, if you want to be on the YouTube, you got to have a nice looking room, right?
That's right. That makes me think about the light that I didn't turn on behind me. But so I've got two questions that I close every
Sure.
show out with. Has there ever been a time in your career where you chose to redefine what success meant to you?
Oh, I think it's just kind of a constant. I don't think that's ever something that's just like a light switch, I think that's something people look for a lot. It's like when you're growing up, you think that, oh, when I graduate high school or, when I turn 18, I'm an adult. And that never happens. It's not like one day you just wake up and like there's a little star that's like, you've leveled up. You're a grown up now. And I think that's true of anyone at any stage. I think, and I did a whole video about that with like the Dave Mustaine example, where Dave Mustaine is one of the most successful musicians on the planet, but still feels miserable because he's not as big as Metallica. Right.
Oh, yes, I remember that video.
Yeah. And I think that's a constant thing. So I don't think it's ever been like a light bulb moment where I've redefined success. It's just, I think it's a matter of keeping in the back of your mind that that is just a thing that will happen.
Mm,
When I was younger getting into music and decided I wanted to be a musician, did I ever think that I would be making YouTube videos and composing for video games and writing music for, trailers and short films and doing that kind of stuff? Absolutely not. I thought I was going to be this big badass guitar playing rock star, right? And it might be the same with you, right? Like maybe you started out as a drummer. You thought you were going to be this huge drummer, but now you're running a podcast. Is
yeah,
that something you thought you would be doing?
nah,
Probably not.
nah.
So I think it's just, everything's an active state of evolution of itself. So I don't try to get too hung up on it. I just I think the thing that's been most helpful is just learning to recognize when I've achieved something.
Mm, yeah, yeah,
And I think a lot of that comes from that sort of post-mortem mentality, after something happens, what was good, what was bad, so on.
yeah,
Because I could easily sit here and look at the like, I don't have enough Spotify followers, but then I could be equally happy about like, wow, I got a YouTube plaque. That's kind of cool.
yeah,
My friends might be out touring Australia right now, but I got to write music for a video game. That's pretty neat.
yeah,
You
yeah,
just have to kind of take it all as it comes and sort of deal with it.
yeah. Well, it's part of that comparison that we were talking about earlier. It's
Right.
when you have that negative connotation when comparing yourself and expecting some level of whatever you think success is. Maybe it's a Grammy on your desk. You're never going to be
Right.
happy until you get it, and the chances of you getting a Grammy are they're not great.
And I think the other thing with that too is, to me, the definition of success is just that fulfillment on that artistic level. Like,
Yeah,
have I done things that have brought me fulfillment and joy as an artist?
yeah,
I've made YouTube videos I'm super proud of. I've learned a lot about making them look better. I've learned a ton about editing, and I've made a lot of music that I really enjoy. And working on other projects where I'm making music I really enjoy. Is it the greatest deal in the world? Not really. Is it going to be this thing that fundamentally changes society as we know it? Probably not. But I'm really happy doing it, and it's a lot of fun.
yeah,
So that's why I do it. So I think that's the big thing, is just the success has to be defined by fulfillment and just, are you enjoying it? Are you doing things that feed that creative ego?
Yeah. Agreed. Couldn't agree more. And last question before we go is, what is your current biggest goal that you can share with us? And what's the next smallest step you're going to take to go towards it?
I have no idea at this point. That's kind of the thing, is like, it's gotten to a point where, I've done a lot of cool stuff and I'm really happy with it, whatever. But it's also like, after a while, it just gets to that point of like, well, what now?
Yeah.
I don't really know, So I think, like, I want to, I think I'd like to do a score for like a Netflix show or something like that, or just a bigger film, because I've done some short films and things like that, but I'd like to do, something bigger. I
Yeah.
think that would be kind of cool. And same with like games, I've done music for a lot of games and apps, but I haven't really done like a big game. So now I'm working on Ground Branch, which is one of my first like bigger games I'll be attached to. So I'd like to do something like that. And I think, I don't know, on the just broader creative realm, I really want to try and adapt my YouTube format into something a bit more artistic and interesting. So I think, with that, it's, the music goals, I guess the only thing I can really do to move towards that is just keep on keeping on. Because I don't think that's something you can actively do. It's just something that happens. So I think the best way to get my music attached to like a big film or documentary or, Netflix series or something like that, the only way I'm going to do that is if I just keep making music and someone out there hears it,
Yeah. Yeah.
networking. I don't know. It's just a thing that it's going to happen or it doesn't. And it's not going to bother me if it does or doesn't.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I would have the Dave Mustaine problem and drive myself insane that I didn't do that thing.
Exactly.
But yeah, with like the YouTube stuff, I think it's just mostly learning more about editing and cinematography, maybe finally investing in a better camera, and just, yeah, trying to push myself and be more willing to experiment with things, rather than looking at the model that brought me success. It's more trying to find a model that elevates that
Mm.
in
Yeah.
some way. What is going to push this as far as it can go? And I think that's kind of the theme that runs either way, whether it's music or YouTube or whatever thing it is I'm doing. It's just a matter of trying to ask that question of, what is that, next small step that's going to take me a little closer to pushing this as far as I possibly can.
Yeah. That's awesome. I really resonate with that right now because like we talked about beforehand, I'm kind of changing my podcast a little bit because
Right.
I just feel like I'm at a ceiling and it's like, well, I could keep going at the ceiling or I could try to change it up a little bit and maybe we go through that ceiling and go to another one and then we can figure it out from there. But
Right. Well, and I think that's the beauty of creative work, is no matter what you're doing, the ultimate freedom as an artist and just that license to do whatever the hell you want comes from the understanding that whatever it is you're doing, you're the one that sets the bar.
yeah.
One of the examples I give all the time is like, and I'm guilty of this. I ask my YouTube people, what video do you want to see next? Here are 5 videos I have in mind, or something like that, or like, hey, what would you like to see more of on the channel? And I think that's helpful just to gather some of that feedback. But at the same time, I'm still going to put out whatever video I want, because it's my channel, right? Because
Yeah.
and Ben Jordan and I have talked about that too on the music end of, when someone listens to your music and they find an album you like, or an album that they like that you made,
Yeah.
that person is just going to ask for more stuff like that, right? They
Mhm.
really enjoyed that album. They want more of that album, but
Yeah.
they didn't know they wanted that album and would enjoy it so much until they heard it.
Yeah.
So there is nowhere to go in that model other than just reiterating the same thing. But if you're willing to take that risk and, leverage your ego a little bit as a risk, then you get to set the bar. You can put out whatever song you want. It can be of whatever quality you want it to be. As long as it's a product that you believe in, that's the ultimate freedom, because, in the end, it's just like, fuck you, I do what I want. And that's the best way to be an artist, I think.
That's a perfect close right there. I love that. That's amazing. I know that you're probably pretty easy to find on the internet, but if there's anything you want to share with people, go for it.
Yeah, venustheory.com is kind of linked to everything. If you look up Venus Theory on YouTube, I'm sure you'll find me. And elsewhere, there's my Gumroad, which has my decent sampler instruments and stuff, which is venustheory.gumroad.com, I'm pretty sure. And I have social media. I don't really use it that much because I'm terrible at it. So feel free to follow me there. I may or may not post anything of any kind of value.
Amazing. Awesome. Dude, this has been so much fun. I thank you for taking the time out of your day, coming to hang.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That's it for this week's episode of Progressions. Thank you so much for watching or listening. Be sure to check out all the links and resources mentioned in the episode down below in the video description or in your podcast show notes. If you're listening to this as an audio podcast, please leave a review on Apple or Spotify. It helps the show so much. And if you're watching on YouTube, feel free to drop any thoughts or questions about the episode down below. Let's keep the conversation going. For those of you watching, you'll be getting a link to another episode you might enjoy popping up somewhere right about now. And for those of you listening, check out the YouTube. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I will see y'all next time.